Hey, there's some nice new intro music. Welcoming everybody to Dig on America. I am Jason Dutch. We are that podcast that is sponsored by the Deep State.
Yes.
That is Mikey Famine.
Yes.
Which way am I got it? This down here is our good friend Rayyvana.
Rayyvana can't be on the bottom. That's sexist.
No, that's
that is
true.
Thank you for combating sexism.
Wait a minute, but I can't be on the bottom neither because that's racist. Get your ass down,
not,
man.
Wait, now it's homophobic. Wait, all right. Well, first of all, my 8th grade social studies teacher,
Mr. Humble.
Yeah, he taught me things that turns out after doing my own research isn't always the whole story. And this week, we're going to talk about the holiday Columbus Day, which we know better now as Indigenous Peoples Day. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to read to you a little bit from American Land I Love as to what literally, and by the way, this book, this isn't from the 70s or the 80s. This is the 2006 edition. So we were a year and a half away from electing Obama when this came out. So relatively recent and still used, I believe, in some private schools. Chapter 1.
Oh, Jesus.
Don't worry, I'm only going to read 7 paragraphs here, and I'll race through them. About 2 a.m. on October 12th, 1942, which obviously is next week, that's why we're doing this now, a Spanish sailor named Rodrigo de Triana, standing lookout on the ship Pinta, shouted, "Land, land," in Spanish, where the ships then dropped anchor and waited for daylight. On the deck of the flagship, the Santa Maria, stood the rejoicing captain, Christopher Columbus. After 30 days of sailing, he had finally found the land he was sure must be there. And at daylight, Columbus and the captains of the other ships boarded small boats and went ashore. He raised his sword skyward and claimed the land for the King of Spain, naming it the Holy Savior, in Spanish, San Salvador. Columbus, in all his excitement, had no idea what he had really accomplished. What circumstances led to Columbus's discovery of the New World? Actually, Columbus was not the first European to discover America. Leif Erikson, in the year AD 1000 from Scandinavia, landed on the shores. But Viking activity in the New World remained unknown to most Europeans for centuries and had no important consequences. God allowed America to remain hidden from Europe until Columbus discovered it.
I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry, what?
Run that one back real quick.
This is I'm not making this up.
I know, that's why I want you to run it back.
God allowed America to remain hidden from Europe until Columbus discovered it. As we shall see, if America had been discovered earlier, her development would have been much different.
They just said Leif Erikson was in that bitch,
but it had no important consequences.
500 years ago. But God was like, that was the preview. It's not.
God allowed America to be hidden.
Yes.
Meanwhile, Europeans
hidden with people in it. Hidden with people.
Europeans are just rolling around in mud in their own feces. They could not develop the technology to get over there even a little bit, but that was God. Apparently.
There is stuff in this book. I'm not going to read. I think
eating and shitting in the lake.
It is. There is a section that I was just reading through this book last night. There's a section in there. It's about 4 pages long. I'm going to read that Friday when I'm on with Lindsay. You guys got to tune in and listen to that chapter. It is
Lindsay, huh?
the worst. It is. Let's just say, it's the prelude to the Civil War, so you can imagine the tone that they're setting. It is the most ridiculous stuff, and this is from a fucking history textbook. The kids. Junior high kids have to take tests on this book and pass it with answers they are told correct in order to graduate.
I'm just imagining God had not revealed to the white Americans that slavery was wrong yet. So
right.
No, it's worse than that.
That was in the New Testament.
Yeah, it's worse than that. And you just got to wait till Friday because it is off the fucking chart stuff. Anyway, we'll continue with this. Columbus discovers America, 1492. I'll race through this. Columbus of Genoa, Italy, made his history-changing discovery 25 years before the Reformation. Like most educated people of his day, Columbus, it's not completely accurate that he is educated. Columbus believed correctly that the Earth is round, but he based his plan on two incorrect assumptions. He thought that he was.
I have a very funny background which I want to show off, and also people knew the Earth was round for like hundreds of years. These flat earthers are just weirdos.
Yes. That's well done. Is that DeSantis?
Oh, that's great.
Sure is.
Boots.
I love the boots.
That's
His
him.
galoshes.
His fucking brand new white boots. Boy, you ain't cleaned up a damn thing.
Look, folks, we need you guys to donate. If somebody could please donate us about $700, like right now, get us to $700. We need to get Mikey a new chair because that shit ain't cutting it.
Wait, can you stand up? Can we see the chair?
This guy's poor back has got to be killing him.
Oh, not the dining room chair.
To be fair, I have a dining room table as a desk because I have so much shit.
Yeah, but we got to get you a new.
It's tall, so computer chairs don't really work.
I am making it my goal to get you a new chair by the end of the year.
I even got one of those. I even got one of those like kneeling chairs. I'm like, oh, this will be better, and I'm kind of tall anyway, so I'll be able to see and everything.
It's only fun for like the first 2 weeks.
Man, my knees lost all the hair on them. The skin is almost gone. All my pants have little knee skids.
That's what I was gonna say.
Right, trusty ape, good one. Mikey's throne. Yes, absolutely.
I was just gonna say, I got this chair for $20 on Facebook Marketplace.
He does need, though. There's a caveat here. He needs like a tall, because it's a taller. It's not like mine is 30 inches high, right? His what's yours? Probably like 40 off the ground.
I had a tape measure around here somewhere. It's probably more than that.
Yeah, so it's more of like a bar height chair.
Okay.
So we gotta get him one that's like a gaming chair, but bar height. So it's gonna be an expensive chair, unfortunately.
I've been looking for him.
Well, it's my goal. We're gonna get together with the bin, all of our other friend shows. We're gonna get you a new chair. This is a done deal. We've been doing a lot of good for the world the last 4 years. It's time that the world paid you with a goddamn chair.
You deserve a good chair. I'm not gonna. I was a little shocked when you stood up.
I was aghast when I saw what he was sitting on. First, the galoshes got me, but then the chair really knocked me off my feet.
And let's not talk about the underwear that this young man is forced to not wear because he. All right, so back to Columbus.
It's giving confusion.
Columbus underestimated the distance westward from Europe to Asia. Now, I didn't put this in the dig, but there was, much like we have flat Earth theory now, this is important. At the time, there was what was called small Earth theory. It was very similar. It was like a conspiracy theory, and the conspiracy theory was like that the Earth was like 5,000 miles around instead of like 10. So Columbus was a proponent of this philosophy, right? So he underestimated the distance, and he did not know that there were continents in the middle, right? There was a lot more than that, but these are the two that this history book talks about. He was sure he could reach the far east by sailing west, but needed finances for his expedition because Portugal had been the leading nation in exploration. He sought the aid of Portugal first. They said, fuck you. I'm paraphrasing. After several years, Columbus finally persuaded the king and queen of Spain, Ferdinand and Isabella. His tiny fleet sailed from Spain on August 3rd, 1492, stopped in the Canary Islands, sailed west of the Atlantic. The further the ships went from land, the more fearful the crew became. Columbus, of course, led them with his Christianity. After 3 weeks without sight of land, some sailors began to talk of mutiny. In desperation, Columbus promised on October 10th that if land was not sighted within 3 days, he would turn back. Finally, on October 14th, 1992, God revealed the land to Columbus. They reached an island Columbus named San Salvador. In spite of evidence to the contrary, he still believed it was the Indies. He then called the native people Indians and their islands the Indies. Today, the 2,000-mile chain of islands between the Caribbean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean is called the West Indies. Columbus made his landing. Some have estimated that 15 to 20 million Indians lived in, we'll call them natives from now on, Native Americans lived in the New World, with approximately 500,000 in the present United States. The native people who met Columbus were a friendly tribe, the Arawaks. They warned him of a fierce tribe called the Caribs. That's actually false. A tribe of cannibals who also inhabited the region. Continuing his search, Columbus discovered the West Indian islands of Cuba and the modern-day Haiti and the Dominican Republic. After weeks of exploring, he returned to Spain, where he received a hero's welcome. He convinced the king and queen.
Has everybody been to the islands?
I have.
Not all of them. I've been to
not
a couple
literally
of them.
all of them, but
yeah.
I've never left the United States.
We're gonna change that, Ray.
That's the next campaign, is fund Ray's trip to Jamaica.
But it is like the Caribbean is the most beautiful place I've ever seen.
It is.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree.
It's stupid pretty. It's like postcard stupid pretty, like every day.
Mm-hmm.
So what did he sail there, and then he's just like, it was a long and arduous journey until I landed in literally the most beautiful thing that's ever happened to this planet. Like maybe the Seychelles is prettier, but like the Caribbean is legendarily beautiful.
I also love the framing of he returned back to the Queen of Spain, but like
we'll get to that.
He brought something with him that people were not very happy about.
They're not going to tell you about that in this textbook. There's literally one sentence left, so I'll read that sentence and then we'll get into the actual dig. Columbus convinced the king and queen to finance 3 more voyages, in which he explored several islands off the coastlines of Central and South America. He finally accepted the fact that he had discovered a new landmass, but he believed that his newfound land still lay somewhere just off the southeast coast of China. So that is the history that they give you of Christopher Columbus. It is very glowing. It talks about how God was an integral part of this. But
it's crazy because
I'm going to read Friday, super tame, by the way. Yes, Anna.
It's crazy because a common theme was he never knew where he was at. Like, you know what I mean? Like, for all this exploration he was doing and discovery, like he never actually knew where he was in the world at all.
Ever.
Nope,
Once.
Never.
Because also didn't care to figure it out. Like, just so uncurious about it.
I'm surprised he found Spain again. Like, I'm surprised he got back.
He thought he was in Spain.
He just started sailing.
He thought he was in Spain, but he was in South Africa.
He was in Puerto Rico. It's almost like, I have returned to Spain.
It's crazy.
In 3 days. How y'all get back
really
in 3
crazy.
days?
All right, so I'm going to read my dig now. There's a lot of information here, so by all means, feel free to stop me at any time. This is not the longest dig I've done, but it's certainly not short, but there's a shit ton here. And some of the stuff I didn't even know, and I kind of know about Columbus. But you guys should enjoy a lot of this, or not enjoy is probably the better way to say it. So according to Britannica, Columbus Day is a national holiday in the United States that commemorates the landing of Christopher Columbus on 12 October 1492 in the New World. The day is largely controversial and is alternatively known today as Indigenous Peoples Day. I already read from the other book, and I should note Mr. Humble did not read to me from this book because it wasn't written yet at the time. I'd like to thank Mr. Humble for not reading from this book.
You finally got
so it seems like it might be a little if what America Land I Love said, if that seems like it might be a little incomplete and paints Columbus in a pretty positive light, you'd be right. So let's look at some of the not so biased and much more complete history of Columbus and the holiday that bears his name. Now, real quick segue, why we are doing this is because the right wing is defending Columbus Day at no end, like it is the most sacred thing in the world. And like, oh, you're attacking our history, you're attacking Columbus Day. He discovered America. Okay. Let's talk
also defending Columbus Day for no reason, Lori Lightfoot. who had a
Plot
lawsuit.
twist. That's a plot twist. Like, why are you going so hard, girl?
She had a recent lawsuit by a city employee who started taking down a Columbus statue in a public area because he was like told to do it. She I don't know what the thought process behind the things she said were, but she said, I have the biggest dick in Chicago. I have a bigger dick than the Italians. Do you have some sort of secret pact with the Italians to take the statue down? I don't know why you did this. I have a bigger dick than the Italians.
She said that?
She said that and then got sued for sexual harassment by that employee. But it's just like, why are you going so hard for Christopher Columbus?
Nah, girl.
Literally.
I don't understand.
And also, Christopher Columbus, how do y'all discover a place with people there? Like, that's always my fundamental question. It's like, not only did y'all not discover it, y'all killed everybody. Everyone. Like, it was a slaughter. It was never, like, there was no friendly, nothing about it.
Calling
Y'all
it the
came,
New World is so
visited,
offensive.
Killed everybody, and settled right in. Like, then you enslaved, then you brought other people here. Who built it for you? Like,
yeah. All right, so here we go.
Just get better from here.
It's gonna get real fucking interesting. So, little just basic history first. Land I Love is correct about one thing: is that Europeans had a demand for goods in Asia after the Crusades. I forgot to read that part, but there was a huge demand for Asian tapestries and a lot of goods from Asia after the Crusades. So, around 1420, small Portuguese ships known as caravels began to zip along the African coast carrying spices, gold, and enslaved people from Asia to Africa.
Zip along.
Yeah, it zipped along with slaves from Asia and Africa to Europe. Yes. Spain was eager to share in the seemingly limitless riches of the Far East. Near the end of the 15th century, Spain's Reconquista, which basically was the expulsion of Jews and Muslims, was finally complete, and the nation turns its attention.
What year was this?
To near the end of the 15th century, so around the time
they got sick of the Moors.
They got sick. Yes, they defeated the Moors.
The Moors finally was running things. They said, "All right, no more Muslims, and none of you blacks."
And kicked out the Jews while they were at it too.
That's crazy. Bill Maher said the same thing on the last episode of his show.
What was that?
Oh. That guy is such a pill.
Bill Maher. It's like, for everything he says, I agree with. He says another smart ass thing that we know is fucking false.
He literally did a whole episode about how Islamophobia is okay yesterday. So it's just like,
what?
Did he really?
Yeah, he had some CIA woman on to like talk about how Islam is the worst thing that's ever happened in the world, and how the Western liberals are enforcing this idea that you can't criticize Islam, which is crazy in America.
A Western liberal.
It floors me. You think that there's no criticisms of Islam in America? That's untenable? I don't know. I also live here, and I have seen businesses have signs in their windows that are written in Arabic, and then underneath it says, if you can't read this, thank a soldier. In Chicago. Like,
whenever America tries to pretend like it's not Islamophobic, remember this little documentary called Team America World Police? Yeah, shut the fuck up, everybody. Because we all sang the song, we all fucking hoorah chanted, and some of us have come to grips with the fact that that was a shitty fucking movie to be made and for all of us to love so much. Yeah. And some of us are still running around singing the song. So,
I mean,
I've never seen it.
I never
even heard of it. I don't even know what you're talking about. Yeah.
America. Fuck yeah. I mean, the movie was supposed to be like satirical, but it was still offensive.
It was super offensive. You don't remember Team with the puppets, the marionettes?
No,
you know what? Now that you say that, I think I do recall it, but I'm not sure that I actually saw the whole thing. I think I just saw some clips.
Not Team America.
No, but I do remember. Now that you mentioned the puppets, I do recall that.
Okay, let me grab a movie poster for you. This will jog your memory.
Okay, because I'm like, let's get a visual cue going, because I have no idea. And also the song,
Come on, Anna, that's not on your Spotify playlist.
No.
Yeah, I remember that movie. I never saw it though.
This was a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not good.
It's
Not the
trash.
World Police though. Like
This is
it's all
supposed to-
type of.
Yeah.
It is clearly a satirical movie, but like you can tell just from the fact that it's
Is it
caricatures.
satire?
I mean,
Well,
it
I
is.
mean,
It's
they-
definitely intended to be satirical, but it still has like the tropes that they choose to implore about Middle Eastern people are just so offensive. It's like you think this about them, like
Yeah.
you must hold these like racist beliefs to create this movie.
Of course.
Well,
Of
you did a
course.
lot of research because you nailed it. Nailed it.
All right,
in
so
one.
back to Columbus here. As I push the boat forward, I pushed the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria forward.
There we go.
Columbus did indeed, by most accounts, believe that there was a better way to get to Asia by traveling west instead of around Africa. And after many attempts and failing in Portugal, so Land I Love was right about that, he finally gained the ear of Ferdinand and Isabella, King and Queen of Spain. They financed his expedition with 3 ships and allowed him to keep 10% of profits. So note, the more profit he could make, the larger his commission would be. I didn't write this in the dig, but other stuff that I did, I do know about this that I didn't want to write it down. I figured I'd just kind of bring it up. So that's what I'm doing. There are rumors. These are just rumors. These are not facts. There are rumors. There are people that believe that this is true, historians. But other people don't agree with them, that Columbus was a Portuguese Jew and was not actually Italian. And there are also others who believe that he was also a spy for Portugal. So just interesting stuff to throw in there.
I've heard that he was an alcoholic and that his slaves actually found the land while he was in a drunken stupor.
I have also heard that. That was
That one I
actually
didn't hear.
something I heard.
Yeah.
I majored in history at U of I. One of my professors
yeah.
felt very strongly. I'm glad you brought that up. That
Yeah,
that was
I heard
the
that. I heard
case.
that very young. I heard that actually
Yeah?
from my great grandmother told me that, and I was like, "That's wild." She like Columbus ain't discovered nothing. I'm like,
She's right. I believe that.
She should've
I
done the
I know.
that.
She told me. She was like, it was slaves. He didn't even really. The way she was describing it, she was kind of saying he really didn't even have like the ability to navigate waterways that well in general, such that he needed a lot of like help and assistance. He was just someone with political influence and able to, use that influence to find places, quote unquote.
That last part, my research does not support. The last part of that.
Which is the last part?
That he had no nautical skills for navigation.
I'm not saying he didn't have it, but just not like the skills that he was purported to have, like that everyone acknowledges him for. Like,
He was Magellan. My favorite.
He clearly was working off of bad assumptions and bad information. But I mean, he did have the ability to go from Spain to the exact same area 4 times. So like to do that back then without anything but a compass, obviously there's some skill there.
But if you have someone else helping you and they're doing it,
that part might be true too. But actually one fact again that I didn't put in the dig that is also true. Remember how I said Rodrigo del Torino or whoever it was, who was the one who discovered land. Columbus had given his crew before God showed it to them on the second day, so it didn't get to the third day.
Before God dropped this new continent.
Yeah, before God dropped this album.
There was a little
Columbus
update window. You gotta click.
Columbus challenged his crew and said, "Hey, whoever's the first one to find land, you're going to get 1,000 their unit of money, whatever it's called, like 1,000 gold coins, let's call it, a month for the rest of your life.
Doubloons.
Yeah, you're going to get this. This will be your stipend for your life if you're the first one to find land." Rodrigo found it. It's documented in Columbus's own diary that he got it. But Columbus said he then also claimed to the king and queen that he actually saw it the night before and paid himself the 1,000 a month. So poor Rodrigo never got a dime.
Speaking of
So-
It's
Columbus's
on
diary,
brand. It's
Yeah.
on brand.
we were talking earlier about conservatives live streaming themselves doing crimes or like documenting it. Columbus's diary
Yes.
is the blueprint for that.
And I have so many quotes from that in here that it's great. So, again, October 12th, 1492, they didn't make landfall, not in the East Indies, as Columbus assumed, or in the Indies, but as they were called then, but on one of the Bahamian islands, maybe San Salvador. Of course, he thought it was the Indies and called the natives he met there Indians. Unfortunately, that term still sticks with a lot of people. For months, Columbus sailed around what we now know as the Caribbean, looking for pearls, precious stones, gold, silver, spices, and other merchandise.
Diamonds and pearls.
He promised all this stuff to his Spanish patrons. And I promise you, King and Queen Isabella. But he did not find much. He didn't find a lot of treasure, right? So in 1493, he left several dozen men, really because he couldn't fit them on the boat, behind in a makeshift settlement on Hispaniola, which is Haiti or the Dominican Republic. I'm not sure which, and left back for Spain. He actually used, I believe, pieces of one of the broken boats to build like a makeshift fort and called it Navidad, which means Christmas, of course. He kept a detailed diary during his voyage. Columbus's journal mentions everything from wildlife to weather to the moods of his crew. He recorded his initial impressions of the local geography and how beautiful it was and how it would make a fine acquisition to the Spanish crown. Most troublingly,
Wow.
he essentially
Look
made
at all
an
this
argument.
land. Why don't we just take it?
Exactly. Most troublingly, though, he essentially made an argument for why the indigenous there should be enslaved. Quote, I discovered many islands inhabited by numerous people. I took possession of all of them for our most fortunate king by making public proclamation, like that's all it takes, and unfurling his standard, no one making any resistance. Columbus's letter also provides his observations.
Hold on.
I love
Cute flag, new guy. What the fuck is wrong with him? Like, what is he doing?
I love the idea that he like imagine someone just walks up into your house and it's like, wow, I love this new house of mine.
I'm gonna squat there.
You're gonna tell me that nobody is gonna say something? I'm living here, bitch. Get out of my house. That's an insane assertion to make.
But it sounds like he just like stood like next to their village and just like planted a flag. It's like,
But it's crazy
Gotcha.
because he literally said in a diary, like, so I took them all. I seen these people, so I captured them, all of them. Yeah,
Well,
for the king.
And
I
a lot of
called
the
Bays.
historical sources that are not, I'm surprised the book didn't go there, that are not like trying to paint him in a positive light, says that the natives swam out to the ship and welcomed him like with open arms, right? Like, thank you. And a lot of people, and this part
They
is
swam out to a stranger.
And
Come
then the
on,
mo-
now.
Right,
No, well,
right.
Come on.
they're the most
there are-
beautiful in the village. They just started taking their clothes off and just like kissing all over
giving
me.
themselves to them.
Yeah,
There
sure
is
that
pretty
happened.
solid evidence from scholars that some of the Taino people, who is the Arawak Indians, is what they originally called them, but now we call them the Taino, which is more accurate and more respectful to that tribe. There is evidence that they thought they were gods because of their technology, right? So that some people did swim out there, because that's written in a lot of very, very scholarly sources and not just the ones that
Listen,
paint a caricature.
I will say scholarly sources can be complete bullshit too, because
They
I was
certainly
gonna
can.
say that because I'm
Yeah.
like, who are the people writing the who's writing the scholarly sources? The descendants of said people? Like these
Because-
are the same people.
yeah, a huge problem with like historiography in the field, right, is that there was no accurately recorded accounts of, in American history, which is what my focus was. I like did post-revolutionary or post-Civil War American history. Very few like accounts contemporaneously of like Black women when it came to that history, or
Yeah.
so it's like, and I mean, even going back further, right? Very, very few recorded accounts from indigenous people as Columbus is raping and pillaging their islands, their communities. So it's like historians.
We're
have
lucky to know what we know.
Yeah, and historians
lot
will
of work.
sometimes take one account at face value and present
Right.
it as fact, which is bullshit. Especially because when it comes to these indigenous languages, there's very few people who are able to say there were written accounts of this, are able to correctly translate that. So that presents a huge barrier in the field to being able to present accurately those accounts, and verbal histories passed down are even harder to trace. So, and I'm not saying like it's impossible that was the case. I'm sure that it's within the realm of reason that could happen.
Yeah, they could have just wrote that and just said, "Oh, they swam out to us." But like,
yeah,
I guess what they look at, and I'm just repeating what I read, is I guess what they look at is like how many different sources say this, that sort of thing. So I don't know. I say
My
all of that
only
with
thing
an
is
asterisk.
like there seems to be a common theme with people who are colonizers, where the accounts all say that all these people were just so fascinated
The
by
Thanksgiving
they
story.
welcomed. Well, Thanksgiving
Same.
stories, we even talk about like conquistadors, like we talk about all the colonizers have these stories where people thought they were so angelic, and it's just like, just as a person, just right, like even modern time, could someone just show up? You never see anybody that looked like them before. Like, let's just realistically say, like, and I know it's hard because, like, okay, we have internet and we're a lot more interconnected. We live in a tech world, but like, because someone you've never seen who's obviously very clearly a human being but different looking than you just show up on your block and you just be so fascinated that you're willing to give all your stuff away. Like, can you just picture? And I mean, I get it. Like, okay, technology and like maybe you're
that's the difference, though.
Yeah,
that's the difference, because if someone
get that
showed up in front of your house and like was going like this and fire was appearing over their head or something like that, we would be like,
and I understand
get in my car and run them over
fascination with the technology, but I guess
I don't trust that person.
But I think the
you
thing
getting
is
clapped
like,
up, son.
I understand the fascination with the technology, but also when you recognize that some of the technology is really weaponry that's used to subjugate you, like, it's just like, no, y'all, like, how long is it taking? It's not like y'all just there pulling the wool on their eyes for 2 weeks.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, and in a modern context, you can look at like there's tribes in like Brazil, particularly in the rainforest, who have been mostly isolated from the outside world, and when they come into contact with the outside world, it's not with open arms. It's usually with hostility, because it's like, who the fuck are you? What are you bringing?
Why do I even know you? Because look what you doing. Like, you came here on some mess.
And then those societies have a tendency to collapse.
Though, you know this though. Like, if you remember the movie Independence Day, right? Like, you had most people were running out of the cities, but you had that group of weirdos who was up on the top of the building, like saying, "I hope they bring back Elvis," and dancing around with like, there's always this group of people who are like enamored with it. And they're like, and then those are the ones who, if they survive, they'll be like, "No, it's a conspiracy. The aliens really didn't do it. It was the fucking Chinese government," some shit like that. So like, people are weird, so like, and also like, I couldn't really find any specific history on this, but I would imagine, this is Jason speculating here, so I'm not reporting this as history, but I would imagine, because this happened a lot with in the African slave trade, is they would say, "Hey, you know what? We're at war with this other tribe." So the slave traders would be like, "All right, well, help us get them. We'll get them up out your hair." And then now the narrative is, "Oh, well, the blacks sold people into the slave trade," when they didn't. It was either them or the other one, right? So
that is the most irritating fucking thing.
Choice.
People are like, "Oh, slavery was actually perpetuated by Africans because they were selling other tribes into slavery." It's like, if I went into your house and I was like, "Hey, I'm going to enslave you and your descent. I'm going to take you on a voyage where you'll probably die, and I'll just throw your dead body off the side of the boat." But you could then, in exchange, and not do it, give me your neighbor. Don't tell me you're not going to give me your neighbor. You don't like your neighbor that much.
I don't even
like your neighbor.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Like, there's a lot of history out there, historians who have said things like, this tribe gave up their enemies because it was them or them. Right. It's like, so are you going to like give up your own family, or are you going to sell somebody out? And if you talk to enough fucking people, eventually you're going to find some crazy ass who today would be standing on top of the building waiting for Independence Day aliens to come and take them up on the ship. So like, but then the problem is that we report those as like being complicit in
But it's
something that
still
they
a
really have
stupid
nothing
hill
to
to
do.
die on, because it's like, why are we overlooking why are we in this situation? Like, it just seems like we're
Yeah.
closing our eyes to miss so many points to arrive at the point about people doing this to one another because they're forced into a situation. People seen
Right.
Jigsaw. We know what's gonna happen. I'm gonna push you before
Yeah.
you push me. Like, that's how it
Right.
goes. But who set the situation up? Like, why are we conveniently looking past all of that?
I don't
Because
have
they
to
don't
look
want to
faster
take
than
any
the bear.
responsibility.
But the white
They don't-
supremacists
Right.
will then point to and say that the ships were owned by Jews,
Yeah.
which is
See,
also crazy.
It's
I
all
didn't
about what
even
it's
know
all about.
that. I didn't
It's
even know they
always-
was saying that.
What it's always about is shifting the blame to someone else. That's that they always want to shift the blame to someone else or say, well, we did it, but others did it, right? And so like you'll see a little bit more of this in a moment here. So I keep pulling up my email and that. All right.
Can I really quick before we continue, just one more thing I feel like I have to point out. They
Please.
read in the little the propaganda booklet that like they were like warning them about a cannibal tribe. There is
Right.
almost next to zero evidence in any historiography that any of these tribes practice cannibalism to like
Right.
any extent. It is
Right.
a lie. It was first, here, but also when people discovered Africa, a lie that was sent back to sort of like discredit these groups of people as like they're not even human, they're
Right.
eating other
Exactly.
people. But there is almost no fucking evidence that ever occurred. I just
You
wanted to-
literally just paraphrased the next sentence. So I get
Sorry.
this totally no, that's you said
but
it way
aren't
more
we still
eloquently
doing
than
that
I did.
today? Like, that's still the thing today. Like, when
Yeah.
that boy came out, it was like they're having cocaine fueled drug parties and they're going out and pushing the anti-drug. I'm like, oh, so the strategy is whatever I'm doing, just say you doing it.
Yeah.
We've been doing that.
So let me skip. I get to skip over. Basically, do I get to skip the whole paragraph? Yes. Okay. So Columbus's letter. I'll skip.
one real quick point of clarification. I think you're trying to say Taino, not Torino, like the car.
I didn't say Torino. I said Taino. Taino.
Okay.
Yeah. The Torino was the guy's name who yelled out "land."
Right, and then
that
you
was
just like,
Rafael
yeah.
de Torino.
And then you're like, yeah. Then the Torino, the people. And I was like, I don't.
And
know
then there's Dominic Toretto.
Okay.
Yeah, Dominic. We don't want to confuse him either because Vin might get angry and come after us.
Bring it.
So thank you for that. Maybe I did say one in front instead of the other, but it's the Tainos.
Yes.
Columbus's letter also provides his observation of this is important, the native people's demeanor. This is what he wrote to the king and queen. Quote, they are full of fear, guileless, and guile means without deceit or cunning. So basically saying they're nice, and they are honest, end quote. Columbus also noted their lack of weapons, saying that they, quote, are destitute of arms, which are entirely unknown to them, and for which they are not adapted, not on account of any bodily deformity, for they're well made, but because they are timid and full of terror. He goes on, quote, they brought us parrots and balls of cotton and spears and many other things and exchanged them for glass beads and bells. They willingly traded everything they owned. They were well built with good bodies and handsome features. They do not bear arms and do not know them, for I showed them a sword and they took it by the edge and cut themselves out of ignorance. They have no iron. They would make fine servants. With 50 men, we could subjugate them all and make them do whatever we want. End quote. Like literally, this is what he wrote.
He said we can make them do whatever we want. So what we want them to do, y'all, because they'll do anything.
Right.
Because they're kind people. They traded with us.
Yeah, they gave us a spear for a bell. It was a good trade for us. We want them in our fantasy league. About 6 months later, in 1493, Columbus returned to the Americas. He went back to Hispaniola, the settlement that he had built from the old boat, and found it destroyed. Why was it destroyed, you might ask? because the people that he left in charge, his brothers Bartolomeo and Diego.
Bartholomew.
No, it's Bartolomeo,
Oh, really?
Bartolomeo.
I was like, I didn't know that.
It's Bartholomew, but the Italian spelling. And Diego had left him behind to rebuild with hundreds of enslaved indigenous people. So he left them behind. The reason why Hispaniola settlement was destroyed was because the 39 men that he left there, a lot of whom were ex-convicts who he had hired to put on his ship, they basically decided to rape as many women as they want. And also anybody in that, any of the other Spanish who didn't like that, they fucking killed them. They killed a whole bunch of fucking people. And so the natives said, you're not going to fucking sit around and rape our women and kill us anymore. So they slaughtered all 39 of them. Goes around, comes around.
On brand.
Of course, this enraged Columbus. So he took 500 of them with him and enslaved them. He then headed west to continue his search for gold. Oh, and by the way, he also decapitated a lot of them as a public spectacle. He then headed west to continue his search for gold because he wasn't finding any, with a large number of enslaved humans. In lieu of the material riches he had promised to the Spanish monarchs, because again, he wasn't finding the gold he was saying he was going to find, he sent 500 slaves to Queen Isabella. To her credit, it's reported that the queen returned them. In 1498,
what am I about to buy with 500 people right now? Like, who am I about to sell this to?
Apparently,
she later found out.
Apparently, the reasoning I found for that was because he claimed the land for Italy, that made those people Italian subjects, and it would then be illegal to enslave them. So that's the narrative that I read behind that. In 1498, Columbus returned again to Hispaniola, where the colonists staged a revolt against the Columbus brothers' mismanagement and brutality. Conditions were so bad that the Spanish authorities had to send a new governor to take over, because Columbus had appointed himself governor, of course. Meanwhile, the native, again, I'm forgetting how to say it, Taino population, I want to make sure I say it right, were forced, Taino, were forced to search for gold and to work on plantations. In fact, what they would do is they would give, if they gave all of these indigenous people a quota of gold to find. If they found it, they gave them a necklace. If they didn't have their necklace at the end of a term of time, I'm not sure what that term of time was because I couldn't find that specifically, they cut a hand off as punishment. So again, these conditions were so bad, they sent a new governor to take over. Columbus, of course, had wanted to be named governor for life and his children after him. In fact, there's a quote, I'll look it up. I wrote it out on my phone. I don't have it in here, but maybe I'll read it later. It's very damning. Meanwhile, the native population, like I said, was forced to work on plantations. And here they took, like Anna said before, this population was completely decimated. Within 60 years after Columbus landed, only a few hundred of up to 250,000 original natives were left on their island. Now, there is other history that we won't get too deep into at this moment, where a lot headed for the hills and like started their own tribes and had a resistance, which is a really cool story also. We'll talk about that later. Columbus was arrested and returned to Spain for his brutality, and was when he got to Spain, he was stripped of his nobility but cleared of the charges. One viral post from a few years ago outlined this eradication of the Taino people. In the year 1500, Columbus wrote a letter that said the following, quote, 100 gold coins are easily obtained for a woman as it would be for a farm. It is very general, and there are plenty of dealers who go about looking for girls. Those from 9 to 10 are now in demand. This quote underlines Columbus's view of the indigenous Americans as a commodity.
I'm sorry. Can we pause? 9 to 10?
Mm-hmm.
Pedophile.
And
He
y'all want him
compared,
to have a day.
he compared the market value of a young female with that of a piece of farmland.
I mean, that is unsurprising. I mean, I was jokingly, I mean, not so jokingly, I was going to call him a pedophile earlier, but I had actually not heard that. So, holy shit. That's,
Yeah, now
you got to
Snopes,
cancel this guy.
the right,
This guy's
exactly.
fucking
right?
problematic.
So the right wing combats this. So Snopes did a fact check on it, and this is from Snopes fact check. Snopes points out about that quote that in the broader context of his letter, Columbus appears to have been neutrally describing the fact that girls were sold as slaves in the colony that he was the governor of, and was neither endorsing nor criticizing the practice, nor admitting he personally took part in it. Nonetheless, Snopes says, and this is from Snopes, it is well documented that sex slavery and forced labor were among the many brutalities that Columbus and his brothers' crews inflicted on the native people. This is all activity, of course, that Land I Love forgot to mention. So, like, there is almost nothing redeeming about this guy. And I think before I get into the holiday, I will. So I wrote down this. Did I take a picture of that?
Are we all just like going to not acknowledge Anna's? It's so good.
I was over here trying to be quiet, and I was like, ooh.
Now y'all know. I don't know what's going on, but now y'all know that was not me. Okay. A few times, like, I know that ain't who I think it is.
For some reason, it always pops up on Dino's face whenever anyone leaves and doesn't have a picture up. I was like, so this is a quote. This is a quote that Columbus said to. This is what he asked for from the king of Portugal, who denied him. He's like, I want to be named the governor of the territories. I want 10% of the profit. I want to be made a noble for life. I want to be governor for life. And my elder son should succeed me and his heirs thenceforth, from generation to generation, forever and ever. I shall be entitled to call myself Don, and shall be high admiral of the ocean, sea, and viceroy and governor in perpetuity of all islands and the mainland that I discover and gain, or that might be found thereafter, discovered by others and gained in the oceans. So, like,
it's a big ass.
Wow. That's, I mean, if you're gonna ask for something, ask for a lot.
I get it, but damn. And they said yes.
Portugal said no. Spain said yes. Yeah. So Portugal denied that claim. Okay. So as for the holiday, the Spanish funded his expedition. So this is where things get really interesting. And I learned all this stuff, and I found this stuff from different sources, which we'll put in the notes in YouTube later. Columbus was a native of Genoa, Italy, and over the years, Italian Americans took up the cause of honoring his achievement as part of their heritage, not particularly of Columbus himself. And I wish Haas was on for this part, because this part would drive Haas up the fucking wall. Because he talks about this particular thing all the time. So why did the Italians take up the cause of Columbus and making a holiday out of this? It was an effort to be recognized as both white and a key to the birth of the nation. At the 300th anniversary of Columbus's first voyage, the 300th anniversary of Columbus's first voyage was celebrated in 1792. And for the first century after that, a few, commemorations here and there of the 1492 landing took place. Now, darker skinned Southern Italians endured what they called, quote, and actually Haas has used this term himself, the penalties of blackness on both sides of the Atlantic. In Italy, Northerners had long held that Southern Sicilians were an uncivilized and racially inferior people, too obviously African to be European. Racism towards Southern Italians gained traction in the United States, of course, of course, as historian Jennifer Guglielmo writes, and she quotes, Magazines and newspapers bombarded Americans with images of Italians as racially suspect. Since Italians had initially filled the void for cheap labor left after emancipation, this is during the Jim Crow era and during Reconstruction, their proximity to blackness led white Southerners to view Sicilians as not fully white, thus eligible for persecution and lynching that was customarily imposed on blacks. The Italians were shut out, the Sicilian Italians specifically, were shut out of schools, theaters, and churches, and often confined to church pews set aside for black people. They were described in the press as kinky-haired members of a criminal race. Italians were barred from unions and relegated to black jobs. In 1892, the Italians didn't like this, so they wanted to change it. And it did in 1992. Following an incident in New Orleans where a mob lynched 11 Italian immigrants, President Benjamin Harrison was faced with the outrage of Italian Americans and wanted to ease those fires.
Is this 1892?
This is in 1892.
Okay, because I think you flew up and said 1992. I was like, who the fuck is
definitely,
Harrison in 92?
Yeah,
what the
definitely.
Like,
where the
no,
hell
that was
president
Harrison.
Of what?
Harrison Ford. Okay. In 1892, this again started to change. There was a lynching in 1891 of 11 Italian immigrants. Harrison obviously wanted to quell the outrage of Italian Americans. And also, more importantly to Harrison, he wanted to ease diplomatic tensions with the Italian government, who threatened war over these lynchings of Italian Americans in the U.S. So the 400th anniversary of Columbus's voyage offered an opportunity to President Harrison to placate the Italian immigrants and afforded Italian immigrants a means to become white and escape oppression. Columbus Day would become central to the process through which Italian Americans were fully ratified as white.
Sounds about white.
Their rationale for the holiday was steeped in unverified myth and painted a gleaming portrait of Columbus and, by proxy, of all Italians into the civic record. Again, I'm still quoting from the same historian. This rewriting of history cast Columbus as, quote, the first immigrant, although he never set foot in America or North America, nor did he ever immigrate anywhere at all. This myth building, notably absent from any genocides that Columbus may have been inconveniently involved in, evolved over the decades and thus granted Italian Americans a role in the nation building narrative. During the 1892 celebration, guys, teachers, preachers, and politicians implemented the Pledge of Allegiance, promoted patriotism, national loyalty, and the celebration of social progress as the virtues of the holiday, all virtually out of nowhere. Any comments on that part before I go on?
Are we gonna get like a cop day? Is there gonna be like a cop holiday because the cops are just, they're just really looking like a bad light. We really got to get this Blue Lives Matter shit rolling. So
I mean, you live in Chicago, you see all those billboards all the time that are like officer down, fallen officer, and if you Google their names, it's like they died from a heart attack because they ate too many Stan's donuts on the job.
Like the memorial highways and stuff?
No. Like in Chicago, they have huge billboards that are like RIP our fallen angel. And it's like a picture from 1980 of this cop from Chicago. And if you Google it, it's like they died of COVID. But they always have to make the billboard look like they got shot in the line of duty.
They were diving in front of, they jumped on a hand grenade in an orphanage. It's like, no. He was drunk, driving this fucking spinny car
and accidentally pulled the pin from his hand grenade near an orphanage.
Fucking bend it on a.
Dude, it's the same thing, Mikey, that we talked about last week when we were talking about fentanyl, right? Yeah. Like the guys, it's all an act.
Yeah.
We know your act now. It's not new anymore.
Yeah, you're fucking washed, bro.
So pushing forward to 1934, the Knights of Columbus lobbied Congress, right? And Congress passed a statute in 1934 saying, quote, the president will issue a proclamation saying, 1, October 12th is Columbus Day. 2, the display. This is very interesting. We will display the U.S. flag on all government buildings on Columbus Day. So they didn't before that. I had no idea that they didn't do that before 1934. I thought that tradition started in the 1800s. So we can thank Columbus Day for that. So before that, I guess Americans didn't care about America.
Columbus Day.
Just like when you're trying to be racist, who better to make as your poster child? You have someone that's going to blueprint. Show you, look at this new place. It's mine. You see all these people? My slaves. They're going to build it. I'm going to live here. Who's going to pay for it? Them.
Mexico.
Exactly.
Mexico.
Exactly.
They were sitting around the boardroom. It's like, we really need like someone to like really push the message forward. You got a book. They're just flipping through some pages and
also IKEA should serve meatballs and we should fly the flag.
We should just get Chris. Chris is our guy. Chris will be great for this. Chris needs a holiday.
Not Chris.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, like this is not intended to like rag on Italians, right? Like this is not an anti-Italian thing. We understand.
I didn't realize this was not an anti-Italian thing. I got to get out of here now.
But obviously,
I've been doing this to mock my future baby. Like what is happening?
But I mean, obviously, they didn't like not being considered white. So that is worthy of.
Hold on, what was Anna going to say? I want to know.
Though, so that's the thing is like,
I know you stepped away. Did you hear that part?
Yeah, I got my AirPod in. I heard the whole thing. Okay. No, I heard everything. No, I was just going to say, is it ragging on someone to talk about accurate history, even though it makes you uncomfortable? Like, is that ragging? Because there were other people who were on the receiving end of the history who are also like, no, we can't even talk about it because y'all might feel bad. Like, that's crazy. Like, it's just like, I mean, like I get it. Like,
history is history. It is what it is. It happened.
It's also something that you described as like, yeah. So and I wanted to get into that because one thing that you described, and maybe correct my understanding if I'm wrong, but what I thought I hear was basically that the Italians who were darker skinned or maybe more proximate or look black looking,
or Sicilians primarily, yeah.
That, well, if there's going to be someone under me, that's unifying things. And now the country can say we're promoting social progress, like, because in the hierarchy, you're no longer on the bottom. You know what I mean? Like before you were on the bottom, but now we have all these servants. So now we're not on the bottom anymore. And that's going to unify us because we're proximate to whiteness now. Excuse me. You're going to treat us better now.
Yeah. What they say. Ask your boy Ye.
I'm on mute there.
He doesn't know. He doesn't know. Wait.
Who doesn't know?
No, wait.
Who doesn't know?
Wait, don't say nothing. Don't say nothing.
I don't know what.
Nothing, man. Just you.
Candace Owens, Kanye West.
What?
There's no way you haven't seen this.
You don't know about Kanye right now? Are you for real?
No, I told you I've been busy the last week. I haven't paid attention to the news.
No, if you was on Twitter, you should have seen this.
But shout out to Jaden Smith for getting up, turning his back to it, and walking away.
Jaden's a real one.
What does that have to do with this picture? I'm trying to figure out.
He's just an icon living.
Okay, but just real quick on that picture. That picture is from the article that I was talking about. Oh my God.
And Candace,
the woman in the corner. Hold on, can we zoom in on her face?
That's Jaden Smith.
No, Jaden Smith.
Oh, that's Kanye.
That's Kanye. Jaden Smith was at the show, and when he saw the White Lives Matter shirts, he got up, like turned his back to them, and like left, and then tweeted, "When I see some shit that's like not copacetic with my worldview, I'm not going to stand for it." And then he tweeted, "Black Lives Matter."
Candace.
But the model who's like getting done in the corner, who's looking at them, that is so iconic.
She just loves being paraded around. I don't understand that woman. And what the fuck is wrong
What
with
do you
Kanye?
mean? She want to be a celebrity. This is her opportunity to be proximate to celebrity and fame. Of course, he's exposure.
Candace Owens, who claims that racism was gone until Obama became president, but she sued her the child of the mayor of her hometown for racial discrimination in her high school during the Bush years. I mean, she's desperate for fame. She sold her soul
It's
for fame.
about fame. Kanye,
Well, we did a
don't
dig
know.
on Candace Owens. What was it? A year and a half, 2 years ago, before we were even this show. We broke down her entire path to what she is. And the funny thing is, it's a short path, right? Like, I used to be a Republican and now I'm where I'm at. So like that progression, and Mikey can kind of document this, it happens slowly, right? So with Candace, like, she's posting anti-Trump stuff in, like, I don't remember the exact months, but it was like August. And then in November, she's working for Charlie Kirk. Yeah, fucking fake.
Charlie Kirk has been so thirsty in my DMs. His team has been really desperate to get me on his show to do a debate.
I think Charlie Kirk wants you, like, bad.
He is creepy. I always say no to the debates because I'm like, first of all, I don't want to go to Arizona for any reason at any time of year whatsoever. I'm not going.
You should just take the trip and not show up to the debate.
But like the other thing is, there is no shot I go on his show and I don't look him in his eyes and say, you have an uppercase head and a lowercase face. Like, I cannot hold myself back.
He does hold the title. He holds a title on this show. I forgot who the other one was, Mikey. Was it? You'll remember this conversation. He was in the punchable face contest we had.
It's horrifyingly ugly. Like, he has the biggest head and then the most scrunched face.
I think it was him versus Owen Wilson.
Owen Wilson has a punchable face.
Yeah, it's just like people with punchable faces. Charlie Kirk, Owen Wilson, punchable.
Wow.
You want to punch Charlie Kirk. I want to punch Charlie Kirk.
Well, I want to punch him for other reasons, not just his face, but his face is also punchable. Even if he was a nice guy, he would still just have a face like, that's a punchable melon.
You know what it is, Rayyvana? He also has light bulb head, now that I'm looking at it.
Yes.
But he doesn't have the charm that the other gentleman had.
Let's show the audience, please, so we can all get on the same page about the uppercase head and the lowercase face.
I got you.
It's important.
It's even Roger from American Dad.
On her show, but she never shows us the picture. Here we go.
I will never leave you,
do your thing.
You.
This is the Rayyvana show. This is Rayy-Actions. This is all you. Go.
It's just so difficult because the ratio of forehead, and I have got a big head, but like, I don't have a head that's like egregious. Charlie Kirk has an egregious head shape. Like, the forehead ratio to all of his, like, I've got big lips and like facial features that fill my big head. He has an uppercase head and a lowercase face. I don't know how else to describe it. He has like the scariest, like, if you just zoomed in on his eyes, nose, mouth, could be normal, but then you got to add the ratio of the head into the equation. And once you do that, it's like, oh, this guy is going to do some sort of crime to me. Something is going to happen that is not
a crime.
Like, you zoom out and it's like, it's a little bit, let me not say anything that's going to be defamatory, but like, I'm sorry, it's creepy. It's fucking creepy.
Remember,
who's got the more punchable face? Oh, go ahead, Mikey.
What's the kid from Family Guy with the upside down face?
I'm weak. I know exactly who you're talking about.
Like the neighbor kid who's got
the upside down. He got the dad got the upside down face too, don't he?
He looks like that kid, but then like they Photoshop and then flipped it right back side up.
But not perfectly. Like, it's a little off.
Or when you're playing Mario Party and you gotta like drop the little pieces of Mario, like you gotta do the eyes.
Bill, we're joking around.
And then the smile. It's like they played the Mario Party game on his face. And it's mostly correct. It's just a little low set on the head. And the furrowed brow isn't helping.
Oh no. Also,
big meat brow.
He is he's also from Chicago. He was on a basketball team that had an extraordinarily racist name growing up. It's like some white
What was the
supremacist.
name?
I can't remember, but it's like a Serbian white supremacist group. It shared the name with them. And he was like the sole rep of the team at some point.
He was the mascot.
Essentially.
Who's got a more punchable face though? Charlie Kirk or Matt Gaetz?
Let's look at Matt Gaetz' face.
We got to bring up Beavis/Butthead's face. Both of them. I don't know. They're both pedophiles. Sorry. I don't know. But I can say definitively that Matt Gaetz is a pedophile. I can only say that Charlie Kirk looks like one.
The punchable face, for those wondering,
That's
in
the
chat,
punchline right there.
it's like what it is it's the cheeks, right? If you have like this, if you have the cheeks, then it's just like looks like a punching bag. I don't know.
They said he got cocaine jaw. That's what I seen on Twitter. Now, I don't know what that is because listen.
Is that
I don't partake, but that's what they said. That little smize is not really a smize. It's stuck like that.
I've never heard of cocaine jaw, but as soon as you said that, I was like, he's got it.
Check it out.
It's got to be true.
Who's got the more punchable? This is an easy one because Mikey's
Matt
face
Gaetz.
isn't punchable at all. Who's got the more punchable beluga face, me or Mikey?
You a little bit. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
It's got to be you.
It's true. Like I have bigger cheeks than he does, so that makes me more punchable. Plus, Mikey.
If someone hit Mikey, I would be like, "Bro, what the fuck are you doing?
Why are you
being
hitting this
hit?
little child?"
Why am I being hit now?
No reason.
Just for walking down the street. So let's get back. We got a bit more to go here.
Back
Not
in
much.
Illinois.
lobbying by the Knights of Columbus in 1934 for Columbus Day, right? They said we want to designate October 12th as Columbus Day, display the U.S. flag on all government buildings on Columbus Day, implying that was not a thing before. And 3, we didn't say, the people of the U.S. to observe Columbus Day in schools, churches, or other suitable places with ceremonies that express the public sentiment befitting the discovery of America, which he didn't discover. FDR did just that, although it did not stop FDR from interning Italians in 1941 as, quote, enemy aliens due to a belief that they would be loyal to Italy in World War II. But a year later, FDR removed the designation of on Columbus Day, along with offering citizenship to 200,000 Italians who had failed the literacy requirement. In 1966, the National Columbus Day Committee successfully lobbied to make Columbus Day a federal holiday. It had only been a federal holiday or a state holiday in Colorado previously. And legislation was signed by President Lyndon B. Johnson.
He really didn't discover Colorado, so that was crazy.
Yeah, but it was, again, the Italian community is there. Lyndon B. Johnson signed it effectively in 1968. The first year it was a federal holiday was 1971. That is the end of the history. There is a shit ton more that I can talk about this guy. But I mean, I open it up, like I have some understanding of why the Italian community would do this, but like you're trying to this thing where you're like, well, we don't want to be considered non-white, we want to be considered white. That's racist in and of itself. I'm sorry.
Is that racist, or is that you making the decision to be proximate to a better situation because you have the ability to do so?
It's racist. It's not their fault that they were discriminated against, but they saw a path out and they didn't bring anyone with them. So yes, still racist.
How can you? The only way that the whole system functions if someone is beneath you in the hierarchy. Like that's the only way
but
that
if you were a good person,
to.
You'd be like, hey, we got our whiteness now. Now let's get, quote, whiteness for everybody. Like the same way white people are treated.
But inherently the whiteness, like the whiteness is exclusivity. Like the whole point is like there's an in club and it's an out club. Ain't no everybody on the in club, because if everybody was on the in club, it wouldn't be a club. Like we're in the club, you're not. We're gonna make you do all of these things for society, aka us. And if you're in the club, great. Italians, prior to the darker skinned Italians, it sounds like they were on the outs. they were being mistreated. But then when it was somebody else on the bottom, now you're on the in club and they're the ones doing the stuff. So you're passing it on, because if it's not y'all, it's gonna be me. So I'm gonna put you up.
Mhm.
And like, how am I gonna bring you up to that when the only reason I'm here is because you're here?
Right.
So if you get your rights, then I'll lose mine. So you're
Right.
gonna stay down there.
Right.
And that's
in
still the
your
talking
belt.
point.
And,
Right?
But that's the point, is that I'm not going to qualify you as a wonderful person because you did that.
You're not
You know?
wonderful, but that's the part of it. Is like this whole system itself requires someone to be on the bottom. Like there is a hierarchy.
That's true, but let's not forget that Harrison probably would not have done anything if it weren't for pressure from the Italian government. Right? So like so Mikey has pulled up some of the origins of the conversation about Indigenous Peoples Day. I think it's just very short, but he's
yeah.
what did you glean from that?
Most of it was just kind of like a
Like dates and stuff?
No, they didn't have a lot of dates and stuff. It was mostly about it was from the Secretary of the Interior, or the Department of the Interior. Just like their canned statement. It's Happy Indigenous Peoples Day, and then she speaks her native tongue and all that stuff. So I was just like, this is a big old nothing burger. You haven't told me jack shit except for happy day. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this. There wasn't a ton about it, but obviously the right thing to do, and the thing that is becoming more apparent, which is why we're talking about this in the first place, is that celebrating Columbus Day is fucking stupid. Who the fuck celebrates a fucking murderous pedophile
America.
on purpose? Yeah, and
America.
Italians, you can chill, because there's plenty of Italians that deserve a day. This motherfucker ain't the guy.
Enrico Fermi Day. Let's do that.
Fermi Labs Day.
Chicago's own, baby. Look at us. We're just trying to brand everything Chicago.
I say let's do Enrico Fermi Day. And then we'll keep, and I just pulled this up here. It says the origin of Indigenous Peoples Day at a United Nations conference first proposed in 1977, held to address discrimination against natives. South Dakota was the first state to replace Columbus Day in 1989, officially celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day the following year. So good on South Dakota. You know, they actually did something right. A right-wing state. You know,
Don't they
credit
have a
where
lot
it's
of
due on that
tribes
one.
there?
They're mostly reservation.
I'm about to be like, they got hella tribes and reservations.
My friend lives there.
Yeah, but unfortunately, they don't allow them to vote. So
They don't allow us to vote.
I'm about to say, why are you talking about it? Since we bring it up, closing the polling places.
Everybody can.
Yep.
And and I'm glad you said that, Mikey, because here's what I'll be thinking. Y'all gave a holiday to somebody who didn't discover this place. Y'all willing to shut everything down.
Yes.
For absolutely no reason.
Correct.
But then when people be like, let's keep that same energy so we can vote. They be like, no, you need to get to work. You need to get to work. You're asking for too many days off. Your
employer will give you 15 minutes to stand in line at the polling place. Excused. It's like, motherfucker, you haven't voted, motherfucker?
But it's just so many people was involved in this lie. Like for Congress and everybody to have like been like, yeah, like we know he ain't discovered, but like let's do the holiday. Like for so many people to be like, let's honor him, and for us to put it in laws, like y'all know that wasn't true.
And you know this.
Y'all knew that wasn't true.
Man.
But
like we were close, we were literally close enough in history to know that was not true.
Let me ask you guys a question. So, and I think I know the answer to this because I know my answer.
45.
But like, do you have any sort of
12
sympathy for, or tolerance, maybe even the better word, for like, you got a kid who grew up with this textbook, and was told all of these things, all this glowing report of like how he was, you know, a vessel of God, and like, you know, we owe him the creation of the nation. Like, to me, somebody else would have discovered it later. No big deal. Or discovered, again, being used as the term that's in the conversation. But like, do you, what's your thoughts when you come across somebody who holds to the notion that, oh, he was a great explorer and discovered the country and did these good things, so we should celebrate that? Maybe because they learned from this book and hadn't heard the other stuff until like recently, and they think it's just fake news from like Fox, because Fox News is telling them that we're rewriting history and that all this stuff that we're saying is actually fake. Like, how do you guys go into that conversation, or
No
do you
sympathy.
even bother?
Let's go.
Can I just say, and I'm going to get off of this, but I feel like I only ever hear white people celebrate that. Like, I don't feel like it's like even though people in public schools and stuff like that, and we get books like that, like we grew up with this history, like we're, you know what I'm saying? Like as children of color, like we grow up with this history and we recognize like, okay. And the thing is like, if you think it's fake news or whatever, or maybe you grew up and you didn't have the benefit of somebody educating you, it's not even about the education, because like it's like a reasonable person can understand maybe you haven't been exposed to this, but once I tell you and you're rejecting me without having done a fact check, now it's that. It's like you're rejecting the information and you argue on me because you want to celebrate this day because it's nostalgic for you and you've been celebrating, and your mom is celebrating, your daddy's celebrating, y'all do all these things for it. And I'm telling you why it's jacked up, and you telling me how you still gonna do it. What is the conversation? Like, what are we talking about right now? So like, I can't feel sympathy with after I lead you to the water and you still want to be thirsty. I can't do anything about that for you. So it's just, I don't feel bad. Like, you have an opportunity to change it. You decidedly didn't change it. Like, and it's crazy because I remember when, I think it was, Andrew Cuomo was talking about like Columbus Day. And I remember just being like,
they might as well put up Cuomo. You might as well give fucking Cuomo a day.
Did you see he got a new show?
He got a
Chris?
show?
Chris, I've seen his
Cuomo.
billboards all over Chicago.
Yeah, he got a new show.
Oh, he did? That was crazy. But Andrew Cuomo, when he started talking about Columbus Day, like, I don't understand why people are so mad. I'm like, bro, you really the governor right now.
He's Italian.
He's okay, but what does that mean?
It's not an excuse.
Yeah, that's what he's gonna say. It's a day that we celebrate Italians. It's like, but like honestly,
to me, it's giving states' rights. Like, let's just take it a bit further, right. And states' rights to do what? When we talk about the heritage of being Italian in America on Columbus Day, what are we talking about?
Nobody talks about that though. That's the thing. Like, literally, I know history real well. That was the first time I ever realized that it was there. I knew that Italians like celebrated it, but this was the first time I'd ever actually seen that there was like a movement because of like the lynchings. I didn't know about that, and so like, and it doesn't change the narrative at all, but I had no idea that like it was an Italian thing. I just thought that Italians were all over this. I don't even know an Italian who's ever brought it up to me.
I think it's very comparable to like I'm Irish, the myth of like Irish people were the first slaves in America. Like there is,
my Lord, that'd be blowing me.
It is so ridiculous. It is the most ridiculous. Like, and I like American Irish people a lot like American Italian people, particularly you see this in Chicago because there's so many fucking Irish cops. Like once they were presented with the opportunity to be included within whiteness, they lapped that shit up. Like I'm lucky I come from an Irish family that's like up the raw, they are very, very fucking like Irish Republican and not United States Republican. Two very distinct groups.
Big difference.
Big difference between those two groups of people. But you see, especially here in Chicago, like it's a very like, oh, we've been presented this opportunity to not be seen as othered. We're gonna eat that shit up, and it's wrong. And this idea that we need to give deference to people who have been miseducated. I mean, I grew up in a town, right, in a neighborhood that is predominantly non-white, but we were still taught that this Columbus myth, this sort of like disgusting mythology surrounding Columbus. And as soon as I learned that was incorrect, and because I studied history in college, reading his actual diary and the horrifying accounts that he's like celebrating him raping indigenous women in front of the men of the community and then murdering the men in front of the women. It's like, this is indefensible. So I don't have the sympathy, because Anna's right. It's white people who are perpetuating this idea that like, Columbus is like this historical figure we need to celebrate. If you know the history, if someone tells you that history and your immediate reaction is to reject it, that's on you. You're a grown adult. I learned this deferential history towards Columbus. Once I learned the real history, I wasn't deferential to it. I just don't have that sympathy. I just don't have sympathy for those people. Like, you are a grown adult. The facts are presented to you. You can believe them or not. If you choose not to, that's fuck you. Like, I don't have to feel bad for you. Like, you have chosen to cling on to the part of history that you think is like cuter or more like acceptable versus what really happened, because it makes you more comfortable.
And we
like,
have
that's
this-
gross. We don't have to feel bad for you. I don't know.